Augustine loathed the way I restrained him under the title of fiancé. To provoke me, he deliberately raced cars and stirred up trouble, acting as recklessly as he pleased, and every single time, I cleaned up the mess for him, until a girl named Selena appeared by his side. On the day he searched the entire city for an ordinary egg pancake just to please Selena, and missed my birthday banquet because of it. I prepared everything and formally asked my family to dissolve the engagement. It doesn't have to be Augustine. I thought of the cold, distant man from my dream, the one who had suppressed his love for me from beginning to end. I smiled faintly and said softly, "Doesn't he have a younger uncle?" Chapter 01. Augustine Koo did not show up at my birthday banquet. While everyone was speculating about what kind of grand finale surprise the Koo family's young heir was preparing for me, he only made a phone call. His tone was casual, almost lazy. "Selena's in a bad mood today. She wants the egg pancakes she used to eat when she was little. I'm helping her find that shop. Isn't Miss Vicky always so devoted to playing the role of the gentle, understanding fiancé? I assume you have at least that tiny bit of kindness and understanding in you." Perhaps he hadn't expected that I had put the call on speaker. There wasn't the slightest attempt at disguise in his voice. It was dripping with mockery. Before I could even respond, the line went dead. It wasn't an explanation, just a notice. That was how Augustine had always treated me, and so he missed his father's furious roar of, "You ungrateful brat. This boy has gone too far." His mother tried to comfort me. "Vicky, don't be upset. I'll drag him here tomorrow to apologize to you. As for that girl Selena, she's nothing more than some little stray he's keeping around to kill time. I promise you, she will never affect your position." I listened quietly and forced a pale smile. It was my birthday. It was also supposed to be the day we formally announced my wedding date with Augustine, but the man who had once sworn he would spend every birthday with me was nowhere to be seen. My parents' faces were livid. Yet I knew what they were really thinking, how to take advantage of today's incident to pressure the Koo family into conceding greater benefits in their upcoming business cooperation. So when I proposed calling off the engagement, I was scolded. Just as expected, everything was unfolding exactly like it had in that dream. "Don't be ridiculous." My father frowned, displeased. "Vicky, it's perfectly normal for men to have a few flings outside. You need to remember, you're the one Augustine is going to marry. Why lower yourself by squabbling over those insignificant women?" Even my mother, who had gone hysterical countless times over my father's own affairs, told me not to be so petty. Was I the petty one? I lowered my gaze, a silent curve of mockery tugging at my lips. After a long pause, as if I had finally made up my mind, I said, "It doesn't have to be Augustine." I recalled the cold man from my dream, the one who had silently suppressed his love for me all along. I smiled and spoke softly. "Doesn't he have a younger uncle?" Chapter 02. Augustine and I were childhood sweethearts, perfectly matched in family background and status. When we grew up, our engagement was only natural, but at some point, Augustine began to grow distant and cold toward me. He hated it when I got close. He loathed it even more when I tried to restrain him under the title of fiancé. To provoke me, Augustine did every outrageous thing imaginable. I lost count of how many times I had cleaned up after him. I once overheard friends advising him not to go too far with me. The handsome young man lowered his gaze and leaned against the wall. A spark flickered between his fingers. After a long moment, he stubbed out the cigarette. Then he let out a short, low chuckle. "Isn't this exactly what she likes to do? Miss Vicky works so hard to build this image of a gentle, considerate fiancé so she can marry into the Koo family. Don't meddle. If you ruin her calculations, she might not even thank you, she might come after you instead." The mockery and malice in his tone were unmistakable. I froze where I stood. It felt as though an invisible hand had clenched around my heart. The pain was so sharp it nearly suffocated me. I even forgot the sting in my palm where shards of glass had pierced my skin. I had been injured earlier while trying to stop Augustine, but he never noticed. When he saw me fall, he instinctively stepped toward me, only to stop himself abruptly, frowning with impatience. "Stop meddling." I ignored the wound, thinking I would settle things here first and then talk to Augustine properly. I hadn't expected that this was how he truly saw me. I forced myself to calm down. There must have been some misunderstanding between us, I told myself, and misunderstandings could be cleared up. But before I could even look into it, A girl named Selena appeared at Augustine's side. He protected her carefully, and he treated her with a gentleness and patience I hadn't seen from him in years. It was the day I met Selena that I had a dream. In the dream, Augustine still married me in the end. He put away his reckless, defiant nature and grew into an exceptionally capable heir of the Coup family. Yet toward me, his wife, he was respectful, but never intimate. I tried to. After much effort, I finally softened his attitude toward me. If only a little, but one day, when I accidentally touched a handmade photo frame in his study, Augustine flew into a rage. Vicky, he called my name, his eyes icy when they looked at me, fury burning in his voice. I've already married you. What more do you want? Only later did I learn that it was a wedding gift Selena had given him before she left. Hidden behind the frame was a letter from her. What a cruelly ironic gift. At first, I thought it had only been a nightmare, until what happened at my birthday banquet today matched it perfectly. When I finally came back to myself, I tried to keep my voice steady. If the Coup family truly wants to choose a partner for cooperation, wouldn't Nathan be the better option? Nathan Coup, the Coup family's business prodigy, brilliant to an almost monstrous degree, yet cold and distant to the point of inhumanity. Even Augustine's father had to watch his expression carefully. He was far more outstanding than Augustine, and also someone my family could never hope to reach. When you're absolutely certain. My father remained silent for a long time before finally speaking coldly. Then come back and talk to me about this. Chapter 03. The next day, Augustine did not come to apologize in person. He didn't even send a single text message of explanation. As expected, as the Coup family's youngest son, born late in his father's life, he had always been doted on. Instead, it was his mother who called to apologize. After the call ended, my father told me to forgive Augustine, but perhaps my words from yesterday had stirred his ambition. So after a moment of hesitation, he ultimately didn't make me send a message first to make peace. I let out a quiet sigh of relief. The bold words had been spoken, but actually carrying them out was far more difficult. Setting aside the fact that I didn't even have Nathan's private contact information, he was currently overseas. Even staging a deliberate chance encounter was impossible, and if I were to rely solely on that dream, a faint headache began to form. But before I could come up with a proper solution, something happened on Augustine's side again. Chapter 04. It was the second time I had seen Augustine's emotions spiral into such violent fury. I had once been kidnapped. It was Augustine who brought the police and found me in an abandoned factory. Vicky. His eyes had been red as he looked at the bruises on my face. He reached out a hand but didn't dare touch me, afraid of hurting me. In the end, the rage overwhelmed him. Gritting his teeth, Augustine punched the kidnapper again and again, as if trying to beat him to death. The scene was so brutal that almost no one dared to step forward to stop him, until I endured the pain and called out to him, "Augustine, I'm hurting. Augustine, stop." A similar scene, the same voice trying to stop him, but this time, the one who managed to halt Augustine's fist was not me. The ache in my chest spread little by little. Fortunately, it was still controllable. Given enough time, it would fade. I watched calmly as Augustine viciously kicked the man one last time, then hurried over to check whether Selena was hurt. The protectiveness in his attitude was unmistakable. "You can actually endure this?" The friend who had brought me out to clear my head stared in disbelief, then said angrily, "Does that jerk even remember he has a fiancé?" I stopped her. I had intended to leave quietly, but one of Augustine's friends spotted me with sharp eyes. "Sister-in-law, your timing gets better and better." Huh? He blocked my way on purpose, speaking loudly. Then he grinned and called out to Augustine, "All right, Augustine, take Selena to treat her wounds first. Sister-in-law's here, she'll handle the rest." They had already assumed I was here to clean up Augustine's mess again. I was forced to stop. Augustine looked up and saw me. He froze. Instinctively, he let go of Selena's hand. A flicker of awkwardness passed through his eyes, but it quickly turned into understanding and anger. "Vicky." Augustine curled his lips into a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "You're behind this again, aren't you?" I frowned. "Behind what?" "Because I missed your birthday banquet. You deliberately sent people to bully Selena." He stepped toward me, his expression growing colder and more frightening with each step, until he stood before me, looking down from above. Isn't this your usual trick? One face in front of people, another behind their backs. Hypocritical to the core. I was stunned, looking past Augustine. I noticed Selena, who should have appeared frightened, hurriedly avoiding eye contact with me. I see. Understanding dawned, so I tried to explain calmly. There's no reason for me to do that. This encounter was purely a coincidence. If I had known you'd be here, I wouldn't have even stepped out of the house. That was the truth. But Augustine didn't believe me. He suddenly grabbed my wrist, his tone dripping with sarcasm. You think I'd still believe that nonsense? Vicky, aren't you the one who's been racking your brain to marry into the Koo family? You're not even Mrs. Koo yet, and you're already throwing your weight around? Who do you think you are? What right do you have to interfere in my affairs? His grip tightened. Pain made me knit my brows. Let go. But Augustine didn't release me. His expression grew increasingly impatient and volatile. There was still no certainty with Nathan. For now, I couldn't afford to completely fall out with Augustine and the Koo family. Yet suddenly, it all felt absurd. The boy who once treated me like fragile porcelain, guarding me so carefully, was now deliberately trying to make me hurt more. So I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. Augustine, you. The sudden ringing of a phone cut me off. It also interrupted Augustine's childish punishment. When he noticed the redness in my eyes from the pain, he seemed to regain a sliver of reason. His grip loosened unconsciously, but he still didn't let go. Unable to pull free, I answered the call with a cold expression right in front of him. Miss Vicky. Hello. Before I could speak, the other party greeted me coolly. His low, magnetic voice flowed through the receiver like an electric current. Thread by thread, it reached my ear. This is Nathan. Chapter 05. Most of what I knew about Nathan came from the older generation and from financial news. The young and promising head of the Koo family, a true favored son of heaven. It seemed that no matter how exaggerated the praise placed upon him, it would feel perfectly justified. But Augustine disliked this younger uncle of his. He sneered. Do you know how the family describes him? What? A textbook businessman who even has to consider which foot to step out with first to gain maximum profit. The billiard balls collided with a sharp crack. Augustine lowered his cue, frowning. He earnestly warned me to stay away from that man. In his eyes, all people and all things can only be divided into two categories, useful and useless. Someone like that, what sincerity could he possibly have? His tone was full of ridicule. I said nothing, yet I couldn't help recalling my last encounter with Nathan. It had been purely by chance. I slipped away from the crowd to get some air on the balcony, but it seemed someone was already there. The man who should have been the center of attention at the banquet stood in the shadows. His neatly styled bangs had fallen slightly loose across his sharply defined brow. Through the drifting smoke, I met a pair of dark eyes that carried an undeniable aggressiveness. It quickly faded into familiar indifference. Sorry. Perhaps he noticed the slight furrow of my brows. Nathan stubbed out his cigarette and voluntarily gave up his spot. I asked politely, "Are you heading back inside?" He paused, then tugged awkwardly at the corner of his lips. It's rare for this place to be quiet. I thought I'd be alone. I smiled, even though Augustine and I had grown up together. I wasn't particularly familiar with this younger uncle of his, so after a few polite exchanges, Nathan returned to the banquet hall. I thought that was the end of it, until a waitress suddenly brought me painkillers and a cup of hot water. That gentleman said that compared to a conspicuous coat, you might need this more. Startled, I glanced around. Only then did I realize the spot Nathan had given up was the only place on the balcony shielded from the wind. The pain in my lower abdomen had grown impossible to ignore, suppressing the heat creeping up behind my ears. I murmured a quiet thank you. Then, almost unconsciously, I looked toward the most dazzling figure in the crowd. I had a feeling Nathan wasn't as cold and unfeeling as they described. But at the time, my attention was entirely on Augustine. And when Augustine, sounding almost jealous, warned me not to treat Nathan better just because of his face, I found it amusing. Still, I agreed to everything he said, until I turned and met a heavy, unreadable gaze. It was Nathan. I didn't know how long he had been there, or how much he had heard, Embarrassment rose within me. More than that, an inexplicable guilt. Augustine, however, looked perfectly at ease, raising a brow. Oh, the busy man came out to play too? Nathan shifted his gaze away and responded calmly with a soft mem. Then he picked up a cue. Around? With pleasure. As they brushed past each other, Nathan gave me a slight nod. A simple greeting. I let out a quiet breath of relief, assuming he hadn't heard anything. Not long after, he left for overseas market expansion, and I pushed that small incident to the back of my mind. But now, hearing Nathan's slightly husky voice by my ear, the memory resurfaced, and that faint guilt returned with it. Yet for me, this was also an excellent opportunity, so I ignored Augustine, who was still standing beside me. Mr. Koo. Deafening music suddenly burst through the air, perfectly covering that formality. Something seemed to have happened again on Selena's side. She looked anxious, glancing repeatedly toward Augustine. Augustine hesitated. In the end, he coldly threw out, "Suit yourself," then released my hand and walked toward Selena. I didn't bother sparing them another glance. I hurried toward the exit. When the music finally softened, the man on the other end of the line continued. "The proposal you submitted during your last collaboration with Koo Corporation was quite good." I was puzzled. "Not long ago, Secretary Lee told me you hoped for a chance to consult with me." He paused, perhaps because he truly couldn't think of a better excuse. In a low voice, he added, "I'll be back in the country the day after tomorrow." Once the words fell, silence followed. The proposal had been submitted half a year ago, and that remark to Secretary Lee had merely been a polite courtesy after the project ended. How much sincerity it held, we both knew. Yet Nathan had chosen those two excuses, and made this call. I froze. All the anxiety and restlessness that had plagued me earlier suddenly settled. I couldn't help but smile, my eyes curving slightly. Deliberately, I switched to a more intimate form of address. "All right, then I'll wait for you to come back, Uncle." Suddenly, there was the sound of something being knocked over on the other end. Feigning confusion, I asked, "Uncle, what happened?" "Nothing." Nathan's voice sounded again, deeper now. "It's getting late. You should get some rest." I keenly sensed that his mood had cooled noticeably. I paused. Why did it feel like Nathan didn't like that title at all? Chapter 06. Because of the incident with Selena, Nathan blocked every single way of contacting him. It seemed he wanted to teach me a proper lesson. I didn't care much, after cleanly and decisively blocking and deleting him in return. I went to the airport with Secretary Lee to pick him up. The flight was delayed. By the time it arrived, it was nearly 3 in the morning. Nathan seemed to have rushed back straight from a banquet. His hair was slicked back, revealing sharp, cold brows. His tailored suit fit him perfectly, every detail from collar to cuff carrying the precision of handcrafted refinement. At first, he didn't notice me. He handed the tablet in his hand to Secretary Lee, fatigue faintly woven into his indifferent tone. "Review this contract again." His words stopped abruptly. His gaze fell on me, and for once, he looked stunned. "Vicky?" "Mr. Koo, long time no see." I greeted him with a smile. Actually seeing him made things a little awkward, but that feeling quickly faded, because Nathan looked even more at a loss than I did. He instinctively withdrew his hand and gave a soft mem, though he tried to conceal it. I still caught a glimpse of the pale blue on his wrist. It looked like a young girl's hair tie, completely out of place next to the watch worth tens of millions beside it. I froze for a second, pretending not to notice as I looked away, but I couldn't help sighing silently. So Nathan had a girlfriend, then all the plans I had made earlier. "How long have you been waiting?" His slightly hoarse voice pulled me back. Secretary Lee dragged the suitcase ahead of us, pretending to be a stranger, so I rubbed the tip of my nose and answered vaguely, "Not very long." Nathan looked at me in silence, his brows knitted unconsciously, his lips pressed into a tight line. He seemed upset. Surely he wasn't displeased because I came to pick him up without informing him in advance. My heart sank. I had just opened my mouth to explain, when I was suddenly rammed hard by a passing suitcase. Careful. My back collided with a warm body. Nathan instinctively wrapped an arm around my waist, obvious anxiety seeping into his voice. Are you hurt? I didn't answer. Instead, I stared blankly at the hair tie on his wrist, now fully exposed. Strung onto it was a small pink and white crystal flower. I hadn't examined it closely before, but now, the longer I looked, the more familiar it felt, and the more unsettled I became. Did you twist your ankle? Seeing me silent for so long, Nathan, assuming I had sprained something, frowned slightly. He crouched down without hesitation. Long fingers carefully touched my ankle as he asked softly, "Does it hurt here?" His palm was scorching hot, the contact brief, yet it carried a strange familiarity and restraint, as though someone once held my deliberately mischievous foot the same way. Suppressing himself, voice husky and awkward as he coaxed me, "My body's hard. Don't hurt your foot stepping on me." Watching Nathan, still bent over to check if I was injured, a bold and almost unbelievable guess slowly surfaced in my mind. As if possessed, I spoke. "On the winter solstice 2 years ago, where were you, Mr. Koo?" The moment the words fell, Nathan's body stiffened. Abroad. He didn't lift his head, replying with forced indifference, as if to strengthen the credibility of his answer. He added, "I was handling cross-border trade with a biotech company at the time." To hell with cross-border trade. I stared at the familiar small mole behind his ear and almost laughed from anger. When I spoke again, I couldn't suppress the sarcasm. President Koo really has an excellent memory, remembering details from 2 years ago so clearly. Nathan pressed his lips together and said nothing more. Chapter 07. I once lost control after drinking. It was at Augustine's villa. Back then, I could freely enter and leave any property under Augustine's name. It was past midnight when someone returned. I don't quite remember what kind of drunken nonsense I made. The last shred of rationality in me stopped that person from turning on the lights, because I was too much of a mess. I didn't want that humiliation exposed under bright light. "All right." The man paused, then agreed. He was terribly bad at comforting people. Even compliments came out awkward and halting. I had to teach him bit by bit. Thankfully, he grew smoother with practice. "You're very good. You're not anyone's accessory, and your excellence is not a bargaining chip for some future marriage. Then do you love me?" I grabbed his collar, my gaze gradually unfocused. "They say only when I have value am I worthy of being loved. And to my family, my only value was a political marriage." The man suddenly fell silent. "You can't even lie to me?" I kicked at his shoulder and chest in frustration, which only made me more annoyed. "Why are you so hard? Are you hiding an iron plate under your clothes?" The muscles beneath my foot tensed even more. I thought I heard a muffled laugh, but soon my ankle was caught by a scorching palm. I'm hard." His voice was hoarse as he coaxed me. "Don't hurt your foot." I refused to let it go. He sighed softly. "They're wrong. You will always be worthy of love." "Then why don't you love me?" "Because I like you." I tilted my head up and watched him bend down. Then a light, gentle kiss fell on the thumb I had pressed against my own lips. "I don't want to lie to you. I like you, but that feeling hasn't reached the level of love. I'm not sure whether I even have the ability to love someone." He said it seriously, solemnly. I was very drunk. After thinking for a while, I asked again, "Then when will you be able to love me?" "Maybe, tomorrow." That answer made me happy. Beaming foolishly, I rummaged through my bag and pulled out a hair tie, forcefully slipping it onto his wrist, putting on a fierce act. I warned, "You're not allowed to take it off, and you're not allowed to like anyone else." The pink and white crystal flower strung on the band refracted moonlight, the glow reflecting in the man's eyes. The cold gaze he always wore softened little by little. Lowered lashes concealed the faint smile that surfaced in his eyes. He said quietly, "There is no one else, and there won't be anyone else." Satisfied, I drifted off, only to wake the next day and forget everything completely. Later, fragments returned vaguely, but the only line I remembered clearly was, "I like you." Subconsciously, I assumed that man had been Augustine. Only he would indulge my nonsense, so no matter how outrageous Augustine became later, I believed he was merely angry at being controlled by his family, at losing his freedom, not because he didn't like me. But now, the forgotten memories surged back like a tide. The blurred figure gradually overlapped with the man before me. Realization came too late. The one who had said he liked me that night had always been someone else. Chapter 08. Nathan stiffly changed the subject. After all, we were still outside. Sensing the timing, I didn't press further. Instead, I followed him into the car on my own. He paused slightly as he got in, but in the end, he said nothing. Secretary Lee tactfully raised the partition. What made President Koo decide to return to the country? After a stretch of silence, I asked casually. Nathan kept his gaze forward. There are some matters that need handling. What matters? Then let me put it another way. The matters you're returning to handle this time, are they business or personal? The moment the words left my mouth, Nathan's fingers resting on his knee curled reflexively. After a pause, he answered without changing expression. Both. And among the personal matters, is there one? I leaned closer to him, my gaze naturally falling on the wrist hidden beneath his sleeve. Smiling lightly, I asked, concerning the original owner of that hair tie? Nathan's eyes snapped up to meet mine. The depths of his gaze were like a glacier on the verge of melting, calm on the surface, yet concealing an unpredictable and dangerous undercurrent. He was the first to look away. What do you want to know? I didn't respond. Instead, I took a deep breath and suddenly shifted, straddling his lap. The distance between us vanished instantly, our breaths intertwined. Yet even so, Nathan looked at me with extreme composure. Secretary Lee said you've been following a project recently. You've been working overtime for quite a while. He could even speak like a proper elder concerned for a junior. A trace of disapproval in his tone. You should have gone home earlier to rest. Are you implying I'm not clear-headed right now? President Koo? Nathan Koo said nothing, which was as good as admitting it. I laughed in anger and wrapped my arms around his neck. A hint of provocation flickered in my eyes. Then perhaps President Koo can think of a way to make me clear-headed. I really was angry. Angry that by now, we both clearly understood everything. Yet Nathan still insisted on pretending not to hear, not to see. Was admitting he liked me truly that disgraceful? Augustine had been like this, and Nathan was the same. Or had he already regretted it? If so, then why did he still keep that hair tie around his wrist? An inexplicable grievance surged in my chest. Perhaps Nathan was right. The intense workload lately, combined with handling Augustine's mess, had left me exhausted and irrational. The more I thought about it, the angrier I became. I lowered my head abruptly and began tugging at the hair tie on Nathan's wrist. My hand was caught. I glared at him. Give it back. Nathan instinctively looked away. Lowering his gaze, he murmured, "It's old. I'll buy you a new one. I only want this one." My temper flared. I stubbornly tried to grab it. A nearly inaudible sigh sounded above me. In the next instant, both my wrists were firmly pinned by his large hand. You don't lack a hair tie. I looked up, and collided with a pair of dark, heavy eyes. His gaze had grown deeper. A silent, surging desire churned beneath the surface. Nathan spoke softly, "But I do." Before I could react, my waist tightened. I was lifted slightly upward, pressed flush against him. The instant sensation against my hips made my eyes widen. "You, Vicky," he said my name, in stark contrast to the heated and urgent response of his body. Nathan's voice remained cold and steady. I have never been a man with strong morals. I was both flustered and angry. "Since when?" "From the moment I saw you." Nathan released my wrists, then raised his hand to gently pinch the back of my neck, letting out a quiet sigh. I can't control myself. Chapter 09. The moment his words fell, the hand resting on my waist pressed down firmly. Through the thin layer of fabric, the sensation became increasingly distinct. Nathan stared at me. Desire in his eyes was so dense it felt almost tangible. The hem of my dress was lifted. His scorching palm slid against my thigh, moving slowly upward. Instinctively, I sensed the danger. I grabbed the hand that was misbehaving, but the man was far stronger than me. I couldn't stop his oppressive advance, until he reached that perilous boundary. "Nathan!" It felt as though my soul was suddenly wrapped in a shiver. The stimulation tightened every nerve. I cried out his name, and the invasive movement stopped instantly. Nathan withdrew his hand without hesitation. Surprised, I looked up, just in time to catch the fleeting trace of a smile in his eyes. Very faint. Gone just as quickly. Are you scared? Nathan lowered his gaze and carefully smoothed my skirt back into place. Then, just like 2 years ago, he coaxed me in a low voice. In that case, you should listen to Augustine and stay away from me. His expression was as calm and composed as ever. Yet when the last syllable faded, a nearly imperceptible tremor betrayed him. I caught it, and most of the negativity in my chest dissolved. In its place rose a subtle, thrilling tension. I exhaled slowly. So, I asked seriously, why did you come back? Afraid of hearing an answer I wouldn't like. I hurriedly added, you said you didn't want to lie to me. Nathan froze for a moment. He was just about to speak when the car came to a stop. The conversation was cut off. Nathan glanced out the window. Go home and get some proper sleep. Next time, don't come to the airport so late. I responded with a slightly dejected mem. I had thought I wouldn't get my answer after all, until I closed the car door. A voice, light and faint, drifted to my ears along with the wind. Because you were wronged. They all bully me. I won't bully you. Then will you stand up for me? I will. What? I'll stand up for you whenever you need me. I'll come back to stand up for you. Wah. I knew Augustine is the only one in this world who treats me well. Chapter 10. My father quickly learned that Nathan had returned to the country. Don't forget our agreement. He glanced at me, his gentle tone laced with unmistakable warning. If you can't manage it, then lower your head to Augustine as soon as possible and smooth things over. I smiled and agreed. Then I turned around and replied to the unfamiliar message. If he's injured, he should see a doctor. I'm not his mother. Augustine had gotten hurt racing cars for Selena. One of his friends texted me, asking me to go over. He probably still hadn't realized I'd blocked him too. Otherwise, he wouldn't have stopped at just a single message. After replying, I blocked the number as well. Then I switched back to my chat with Nathan. In one go, I sent him the photos my friend had taken of Augustine and Selena going out intimately together, along with the text message from just now. Pitifully, I typed, Uncle, do I really look that much like a tool to you? As for the matter of how I addressed him, after confirming Nathan's feelings for me that day, I privately asked Secretary Lee. Secretary Lee had clearly been warned in advance. He answered vaguely, then said meaningfully, Miss Vicky, do you want to address him the same way young Master Augustine does? Only then did I realize. I never would have guessed that he could get secretly jealous even over something as small as a form of address. The more I thought about it, the more complicated and amusing it felt. If he could get jealous over such trivial details, then in other matters, wouldn't he be drowning himself in barrels of jealousy? I remembered again what Nathan had murmured in the car that day, but I do. For some reason, I felt that at that moment, he had been aggrieved. He hid it too well. So well that I couldn't resist wanting to provoke him, to see the wildness and desire hidden beneath his calm. Nathan replied quickly, No, I'll discipline him and make him apologize to you. Serious and rigid. I could almost see him replying in that stern manner through the screen. I pouted in boredom, but I continued messaging him anyway. I said, today's food was too salty. Will I swell up tomorrow? Worried. Nathan replied, No. Nathan replied, I know a very good chef. I said, but I want to eat something made by Uncle. There was a long silence. I assumed Nathan had gone back to work and didn't think much of it. But not long after, Secretary Lee bombarded me with messages. Secretary Lee, Miss, what exactly did you say to President Koo? Why is he looking up apartments near your company and asking me which lunchbox looks nice? I raised a brow and replied, Can't your President Koo want to transition into a domestic, good husband type? Secretary Lee, and yet someone had already planned out an entire week's menu in private. But the message he sent me contained only 3 cold words. Not appropriate. TSK. So secretly passionate. I laughed in irritation and went straight to the point. My dad told me to build a good relationship with you. Nathan replied, I said, President Koo's single-word replies are truly cold. Silence again. I poked Secretary Lee. What is your President Koo doing right now? Secretary Lee, am I also part of your play now? Smile smile. Despite that, Secretary Lee still secretly sent me a short video. In the video, Nathan was frowning, looking somewhat displeased. Before I could see clearly, he suddenly seemed to sense something and looked up directly at the camera. The video shook violently and ended abruptly. He had discovered it. Holding my phone, I wondered if I had gone too far. He seemed unhappy. Just as I was hesitating, Nathan's message popped up. It was an animated sticker, a cute little dog wearing a yellow hat, lying in a basin, nodding vigorously. Above its head were two big words, MMMM. I froze. A bold thought suddenly surfaced. Was Nathan just now seriously searching for a cute sticker? The next message confirmed it. Nathan said, "Sorry, I'm used to chatting like this with Secretary Lee and the others. I'll change." Attached was another obedient, adorable puppy sticker. I was speechless. So he really had been looking for a cute sticker just now. Something inside me softened instantly. I took a deep breath. Is it convenient to take a call now? It won't take much of your time. Instead of a text reply, Nathan sent a video call. Sorry. His cool voice came through as soon as the call connected. Nathan. I cut him off and blurted out, "Let's have an affair." The moment the words left my mouth, the always composed and self-controlled man's face went blank for a split second. Then, the tips of his ears, hidden beneath black strands of hair, flushed completely red. Chapter 11. Augustine had been in a terrible mood lately, with an underlying sense of unease, but he couldn't quite pinpoint what was wrong. In the end, he blamed it on the pressure from his parents' control. Vicky must have gone to complain again. Even his mother, who had always doted on him, had warned him with unusual severity this time. Augustine, you can fool around with women outside if you must, but they are absolutely not allowed to step into the Koo family's doors. Your future wife can only be Vicky unless you find someone better than her. Only Vicky. Only her. Those words echoed like a curse in Augustine's ears, irritating him until he clenched his teeth. Why could it only be Vicky? Why did even his feelings have to be controlled? He was a person, not some puppet whose every move was dictated. But perhaps that was exactly why Vicky was so determined about that position. Lately, she had gone further and further. Augustine let out a cold laugh. Yet he didn't want to admit it. When he realized Vicky had done those things out of jealousy, a secret satisfaction had bloomed inside him. As if the more Vicky liked him, the more she cared about him, the more it proved he still had some power to resist the control imposed on him. But this time, Vicky had gone too far. He needed to teach her a lesson. That was what Augustine told himself. Augustine, perhaps intimidated by his dark expression. The people around him pushed one another, none daring to step forward. In the end, it was Selena who lifted a gentle smile and walked over softly. You really didn't need to get so angry at Miss Vicky because of me. She only targeted me because she cares about you too much. I understand. She paused, raising her hand as if to smooth the crease between his brows. I know you'll marry in the end. I've never wanted too much. Augustine instinctively avoided Selena's touch, but the words "cares about you too much" inexplicably eased his irritation. He snorted coldly. She's the one in the wrong. Why are you making excuses for her? Selena's raised hand stiffened. She withdrew it quietly and smiled. All right, I understand. What Augustine liked most about Selena was her obedience and gentleness. And at certain moments, her expressions and mannerisms resembled Vicky very much. Oh, Vicky from before. When they were young, Vicky's world revolved entirely around him. But after growing up, Augustine thought mockingly, the grown-up Vicky cared only about interest, about benefits. What she wanted was never Augustine himself. She wanted the title of the Koo family's future mistress. He still remembered the excitement he felt when he first heard they were to be engaged. How he had gone to find her, only to overhear her conversation with her father. In that moment, Augustine felt like a fool. And afterward, no matter how outrageous his behavior became, Vicky never got angry. Instead, she diligently cleaned up every mess for him. Everyone thought Vicky treated him exceptionally well, but Augustine believed it was simply because she couldn't bear to lose the position of Mrs. Koo. Until later, when he accidentally caught the lonely, hurt look in Vicky's eyes. Only then did he realize, beyond interest, Vicky did actually like him. The discovery pleased Augustine, yet it also carried a faint, vengeful thrill. So not long after, Selena appeared by his side. As expected, Vicky became jealous. Enough. Augustine's mood improved considerably. He lazily lifted his eyelids. If you have something to say, just say it. Chapter 12. The moment his words fell, Selena's eyes instantly turned red. She looked as though she might burst into tears at any second. That, at least, was nothing like Vicky. Augustine's thoughts drifted. From childhood to adulthood, he had rarely seen Vicky cry, and yet that strong-willed Vicky had once again targeted Selena because of him. Pathetic. Getting worked up over something this small? He sneered, his gaze darkening instantly. Enough. I'll handle it. This time, the punishment for Vicky should be enough. That was what Augustine thought. So during the street race, he deliberately made a small mistake. The extent of the injury was still within controllable limits. When his friends noisily suggested calling his fiancé over to take a look, Augustine didn't stop them. While waiting for a reply, he stared at his leg, now wrapped in thick plaster, and suddenly felt a flicker of regret. It looked rather serious. Frowning, he thought Vicky would definitely worry herself sick. In the past, when he'd gotten a small cut on his hand, Vicky had been so anxious her eyes nearly turned red. This time, forget it. When Vicky came, he wouldn't stay angry with her. The corners of Augustine's lips lifted uncontrollably, until the friend who had offered to contact Vicky suddenly changed expression. He glanced at Augustine hesitantly. Augustine's eyelid twitched. What did she say? Augustine, maybe sister-in-law has been busy lately. The man stammered, irritated. Augustine ignored his injured leg and snatched the phone directly. And there it was. If he's injured, he should see a doctor. I'm not his mother. The words hit him starkly. What does she mean by that? Furious, Augustine tried sending a message back, only to discover the number had been blocked. Anger mixed with an inexplicable surge of panic as Augustine's voice rose sharply. She even blocked me? She blocked me, the friend corrected weakly, then cautiously asked. Augustine, is sister-in-law really angry this time? Angry? Augustine froze. Then he let out a cold laugh. She's the one who did something wrong. What right does she have to be angry with me? His friend said nothing more. Augustine tossed the phone back and pulled out his own. But after a moment's thought, he pressed the screen dark again. Fine. He'd just ignore her a while longer. It wouldn't be long anyway. Vicky would definitely lower her head first. After all, she liked him so much, and had liked him for so many years. Augustine thought with complete confidence. Chapter 13. Nathan seemed to have misunderstood what I said. I had no idea what kind of scenario he constructed in his head, but the light in his eyes dimmed instantly. In the end, he still responded in a low voice. All right. No. Wait, realizing the joke might have gone too far, I hurried to explain. What I meant was, do you want to try being together? Nathan gave a quiet mem. I understand. I was speechless. I really don't think you do. But regardless, the atmosphere between us grew far more ambiguous. The apartment near my company was eventually purchased, and on my desk appeared the pale pink floral lunchbox that Secretary Lee had complained looked like something chosen by a straight man with questionable taste. Coup Corporation was far from my office. Every noon, Nathan would drive to the apartment, cook, hand the lunchbox to me in the underground parking garage, then rush back to the company for meetings. In the lingering chill of early spring, he wore only a thin trench coat. His usually meticulous hair now fell casually over his forehead, perhaps to fit the identity of our affair. Nathan wore a black mask. Only his slightly upturned eyes were visible. The first time we met like this, I couldn't help staring a little longer. What is it? Maybe because of the mask. His voice sounded slightly muffled. Why aren't you wearing a suit? I was curious. Every time I'd seen him before, he'd been impeccably dressed in tailored suits. Ascetic, restrained. Nathan paused mid-motion, holding the lunchbox. He looked up at me. You don't like it? It's just unfamiliar, I answered honestly. Then, deliberately grabbing his hand and pressing it against my cheek, I misbehaved again. It's not quite trench coat season yet, is it? The hand I held stiffened instantly. Nathan, I called with a sweet smile. Did you change your style for me? Trapped. He had no choice but to meet my gaze. After a long moment, he sighed. I'm 8 years older than you, he said quietly. Secretary Lee said this makes me look younger. Look younger. I froze, not expecting those words from him. Nathan was not someone who cared about others' opinions, at least, from everything I knew. Most of the time, he could even be described as stubbornly self-willed, calm, self-controlled, absolutely certain of every step he took. Yet now he was saying something that bordered on insecurity. The warmth in my palm slowly rose. I regret it. I suddenly took a deep breath and smiled. Nathan, I regret it. He didn't speak. He looked at me steadily, as if he had anticipated this, then softly responded, if you want to go back on it now. I regret believing Augustine when he said you were boring and cold. I cut him off, smiling brightly. I regret agreeing to stay away from you. Only much later did I realize. Nathan must have heard those words back then, so he chose to step away first. A flash of astonishment surfaced in his dark, restrained eyes. Almost urgently, he asked, what do you mean? I wasn't joking that day when I said we should try. I stood on tiptoe, through the mask. I pressed a kiss to his lips. It's still too cold for just a trench coat. Looping my arms around his neck, tilting my head, I teased. Uncle, how about I give you something warm that goes perfectly with a trench coat? My waist tightened suddenly. Nathan lifted me with one hand and sat me on the hood of the car. He pulled off his mask, lowered his head, but just as our breaths tangled, he paused. Extremely polite, he asked, I want to kiss you, may I? I simply hooked my arms tighter around his neck and tipped my chin up, but I regretted it almost immediately, completely different from his usual restrained image. Nathan's kiss was fiercely possessive. My breath was stolen entirely. For a fleeting moment, I remembered the dark eyes I'd seen once through curling smoke. Dazed, I thought, Uncle really is very good at pretending. Chapter 14. Promising to knit Nathan a scarf had been a spur-of-the-moment idea, but when I actually tried to do it, I ran into one problem after another. I stared blankly at the drafty, uneven thing in my hands that somehow resembled a strip of badly grilled pork belly. In the end, I decided not to torture myself. I had only said I would give him a scarf. I never specified it had to be handmade, right? I thought guiltily. Fortunately, Nathan didn't say anything when he received it. I let out a breath of relief, not noticing the way his eyes dimmed for a fleeting second. Augustine, meanwhile, had no time to bother me. The news of him crashing his car while street racing for a little fling somehow leaked out. For a while, he became the laughingstock of the circle. On top of that, Nathan Koo, who had originally intended to stay abroad, suddenly returned home. Sensing a crisis, Father Koo flew into a rage. He dragged Augustine straight out of the hospital, forced him to come to my house to apologize, and then locked him up at home, declaring he would properly discipline him. The day Augustine came to apologize, I wasn't even at home. I had no intention of listening to him. Anyway, was it you? Breathless from kissing, I pressed a hand against Nathan's shoulder. He leaned down and kissed me again. This time he didn't go any further, only giving a quiet mem. Are you happy now? I pretended to think, then quickly broke into a smile. If I say I'm not happy, that would definitely be a lie. A faint smile surfaced in Nathan's eyes. He lifted his hand and lightly squeezed the back of my neck. Then he stood and returned to his desk, lowering his head to review documents. In an instant, his aura settled. He was once again President Koo, the strategist who commanded the business battlefield. Watching him, I felt something slightly off. It was perfectly normal for adult men and women to almost lose control, especially since I had personally experienced just how intense he could be. Yet despite all the times Nathan and I had kissed and held each other, there had been several moments when I could barely hold back. And Nathan, whose reactions were far more severe than mine, had still restrained himself every single time. If he kept suppressing himself like that, wouldn't something go wrong? The thought made me faintly worried, until Nathan looked up at me. Why aren't you coming over? Didn't you say you had questions to ask? I'm coming, My father knew I often visited Nathan. He assumed I was merely currying favor. And, pleased with that assumption, didn't restrict me, which conveniently allowed me to stay by Nathan's side and learn from him. "You're not afraid I'll use what I learn against you?" In front of Nathan, I gradually became more like myself. Excitedly, I teased, "The business world is a battlefield. President Coup." Nathan didn't mind at all. His tone was calm. "If you want to learn, I'll teach you." Just a few simple words. Yet for some reason, my nose stung. I hurriedly lowered my head to hide it, but my voice still carried a thick nasal edge. "So good to me?" I joked lightly. Or is President Coup just very confident in himself? I suddenly thought of my father. I knew he had an illegitimate son outside. I knew he was deliberately grooming that son. As for me, in his eyes I was nothing more than a marriage alliance tool. Then I thought of my mother, once such a confident and capable woman. She had gradually become insecure and hysterical in her failed marriage. "What's the point of a girl being so strong?" she had shouted at me countless times. "Even if you learn so much and become capable, people still won't like you." I knew she wasn't only talking about me. I didn't want to be a marriage tool, and I didn't want to become the person I saw in my dream, the one who gradually lost herself because she loved someone too much. "If you can use what I teach you to go against me." Nathan lifted my chin, his warm thumb brushing gently at the corner of my eye. A captivating smile rippled through his gaze. "Even defeat me," he said softly, "then I'll be proud of you." My vision blurred. Before meeting Nathan, I never truly believed in the love people talked about. When we were young, Augustine said that besides his parents, I was the person he loved most. But as we grew up, he repeatedly hurt me while relying on my feelings for him. My parents said they loved me, said they had painstakingly cultivated me, yet all they wanted was for me to be a beautiful vase, to marry into the Coup family and secure the greatest benefit for our own. To achieve that, I had to keep yielding, because they loved me, and to repay that love, I had to sacrifice. Nathan had never said he loved me. He had even bluntly told me, "I'm not sure whether my liking for you has reached the level of love," but he quietly paved the way for me. And whenever I turned back, he was there, silently telling me he would always stand up for me. What am I going to do, Nathan? I laughed, grabbing his hand and pressing it tightly against my cheek, rubbing against it, murmuring softly, "If you keep being like this, I'll only like you more and more." In the beginning, I had only wanted to use him as an excuse to resist my father and the Coup family. Nathan was silent for a long time. His long, thick lashes lowered, hiding whatever emotion lay in his eyes. I thought he would say something like, "Then I hope you'll like me even more." But instead, Nathan suddenly lowered his head and kissed me, more fiercely than ever before, as if it were the last embrace of his life. Desperate and consuming, dazed by the kiss, I failed to notice that something was wrong. Chapter 15. My relationship with Nathan grew increasingly steady. The next time I saw Augustine was at a private club. I was following Nathan around, learning from him, and happened to witness Selena rising on tiptoe to kiss Augustine of her own accord. I couldn't help sighing inwardly. He'd been locked at home and disciplined for so long, yet he still hadn't given up. It seemed Selena was his true love after all. But before I could watch any longer, a hand covered my eyes. A low voice sounded by my ear. "Jealous?" Before I could react, Nathan pulled a hood over my head and lifted me with one arm. With his other hand, he hooked my leg around his lean waist. My back pressed against the wall. The sudden weightlessness made me instinctively cling to his neck. Any startled sound I made disappeared between his lips, until a careless whistle cut through the air. Well, I never expected this. Uncle's quite wild. It was Augustine. Nathan ignored him. If anything, the kiss deepened, more forceful than before. I had no habit of being intimate in public. Flustered and annoyed, I hit Nathan lightly, only to have my hands restrained in the process. "Looks like I'll be getting a little ant soon." Nathan shielded me completely. Augustine couldn't see me, seeing no sign that Nathan intended to stop. Augustine chuckled and decided not to stay and embarrass himself. But before leaving, he added casually, "Oh right, it's my birthday today. If you don't mind, Uncle, bring your girlfriend along and join the fun." "Birthday?" I froze. Only then did I remember. But it had little to do with me now. Soon enough, my engagement with Augustine would be dissolved. Not long after Augustine left, Nathan released me, his gaze dark. I glared at him. Next time. Can you not? Augustine hates me. Nathan suddenly interrupted, lowering his eyes. He gently wiped the lingering moisture from the corner of my lips. What do you mean? I didn't quite understand, but unease stirred faintly in my chest. So if you want to get back at him, you can use me. I stared at him, then I laughed in disbelief. You still think I got close to you just to retaliate against Augustine? Nathan didn't answer directly. Instead, he changed the subject. Secretary Lee said you were learning to knit a scarf? I was momentarily thrown off. After a while, I remembered I had once posted on social media complaining about how hard knitting was and forgotten to block Secretary Lee. Yes, I admitted, but I'm terrible with my hands. The scarf I made was too ugly to show anyone. What does that have to do with Augustine? I sensed the issue might lie with that scarf, but I couldn't figure it out. Nothing. Nathan reached out and ruffled my hair. Let's go. Go where? My temper flared again. I stared straight at him and sneered. Isn't it your nephew's birthday? He was generous enough to invite you, and even wanted to meet his future aunt. You're just going to ignore that? Or do you think I, as the future aunt, am too embarrassing to bring along? That's not what I meant. Nathan pressed his lips together, a hint of frustration in his voice. I'm sorry. Nathan. I grabbed his tie and forced him to lower his head. Word by word, I said, if you don't publicly confirm today that I'm your future wife, then we're over. Nathan's body went rigid under my grip. After a long moment, he let out a barely audible sigh. A faint, helpless smile appeared on his face. All right. Chapter 16. A sense of unease had been lingering in Augustine's heart, and that unease only intensified after he saw Nathan kissing someone openly in public. Returned to the private room, and realized the familiar figure was nowhere to be found. Where's Vicky? He kicked the table irritably. There was a trace of panic in his voice, one he didn't even notice himself. The people in the room exchanged glances. Finally, someone gathered the courage to speak. Wasn't it you who said, Augustine, that since you didn't attend sister-in-law's birthday banquet, there was no need to invite her to your birthday party either? Augustine froze. Had he said that? He genuinely couldn't remember. I was talking out of anger and you idiots took it seriously? He glared at them, furious. Then what are you waiting for? Go get her. But not long after, Augustine. I think sister-in-law blocked me. Me too. Same here. A whole group of people. Yet not one of them could reach Vicky. Augustine's eyelid twitched violently. Subconsciously, he pulled out his phone and removed Vicky from his blacklist. But when he sent a message, he was met with a red exclamation mark. Vicky had blocked him too? Augustine blinked slowly, almost blankly. Only then did he suddenly realize. It had been nearly a month since he last saw Vicky. During the time he'd been locked at home and lectured, his father had confiscated his phone to prevent him from contacting Selena. Augustine had thought it unnecessary. After all, he had never even saved Selena's contact information, perhaps because Nathan had returned. His father had tightened control even further. Augustine had no way to contact the outside world, let alone see Vicky. This birthday was the only reason he'd been allowed out. His mother had pleaded on his behalf, but Augustine had never expected that the surprise awaiting him would be this. Just this morning, he had even received a birthday gift from Vicky. Good, very good. After discovering that even his calls were blocked, Augustine clenched his teeth in fury. He stood abruptly, intending to go find Vicky himself, when the door was pushed open. Uncle? Augustine's brows knitted tightly at the sight. He hadn't expected Nathan to actually show up and join their chaos. Politeness on the surface was still necessary. Sorry, Uncle, I've got something to handle. Weren't you the one who said you wanted to meet your future aunt? A familiar voice sounded from behind Nathan. The moment he heard it, Augustine's eyes widened instantly. His heart pounded so violently his fingertips went numb. All that unease from before solidified into something tangible. Vicky walked in, standing beside Nathan, her fingers interlocked with his. the gentle smile on her face, the one he had known for over a decade. She tilted her head slightly and smiled sweetly. Why is it that now your future aunt is here, and you're the one trying to leave, little nephew? For a moment, a buzzing filled Augustine's head, as though a heavy hammer had come crashing down, leaving him bloodied and stunned. Only then did he understand. That earlier sense of familiarity had not been an illusion. Chapter 17. When I saw Augustine's face drain of color in shock, I was calmer than I had imagined. I even felt bored. I had known Augustine longer. I had once truly liked him. Yet now, looking at him, I felt nothing. Perhaps whatever feelings I had were worn away bit by bit while I cleaned up his endless reckless messes. I had only endured it out of obligation. Until someone told me, Vicky, you don't have to live like this. You have other paths you can take. At that thought, I couldn't help smiling faintly. What do you mean? After a long while, Augustine seemed to recover some rationality. He stared at me intensely, his voice hoarse. Vicky, what is this supposed to mean? You should call me Aunt. I corrected him, deliberately lifting the hand intertwined with Nathan's and waving it in front of him. Raising a brow, I asked, isn't it obvious? Bullshit. Augustine kicked the table violently, the crash echoing through the room. He instinctively tried to come toward me, but Nathan stepped in front of me. The tall man stood firm, his presence cold and oppressive. Augustine, he said icily, is this how you were taught to treat your elders? Elders? Augustine curled his lips in contempt. Who exactly are you referring to? Something about his tone felt off, but before I could think it through, he suddenly laughed again. His voice turned strangely indulgent. Enough. Vicky, you don't need to use him to get back at me. I'm not angry anymore. I've thought about it a lot. Even if you were marrying me for family interest, as long as you like me, even just a little, that's enough. But as he spoke, the confidence in his voice began to tremble. At some point, his eyes had reddened. Forcing a smile, he said, I don't mind anymore. I won't use Selena to provoke you, so stop using Nathan to make me jealous, okay? I frowned deeply, baffled by his behavior. Why would I want to make you jealous, Augustine? I just don't like you anymore. After a pause, I added, actually, I stopped liking you a long time ago. How could you not? Augustine's hand trembled as he yanked at the scarf around his neck, his eyes bloodshot. You clearly had Auntie deliver the scarf you knitted for me this morning as a birthday gift. How can you say you don't like me? The scarf? My gaze fell on the scarf around his neck. It looked strangely familiar. Then it clicked. You got jealous because of this? I almost laughed from disbelief. That's not even the one I knitted. The moment the words left my mouth, Nathan's body went rigid. He stared at me, rare confusion in his eyes. So that was it. How could I forget? He was always the type to get jealous over nothing. He had sulked silently even over a form of a dress before. Rubbing my temples, I explained. I borrowed that from a friend as a template. Who knew my mom would think I knitted it myself and send it over? But even as I said it, a chill settled in my heart. I knew what my mother intended. She didn't know about the agreement between my father and me. She just believed that if Augustine and I reconciled, my father would be pleased. She was simply willing to sacrifice her own daughter's happiness to please a man who didn't love her. Nathan seemed to piece it together as well. His grip on my hand tightened unconsciously. His voice carried guilt and tenderness. I'm sorry. We'll settle this later. I glared at him fiercely. My goal for coming here was achieved. There was no need to stay and watch further drama. I pulled Nathan toward the door, but just as I pushed it open, Augustine called out, You really have terrible taste in men. He seemed calmer now. The smile on his lips didn't reach his eyes. Word by word, he said, If you don't like me, then what? You like that lunatic standing beside you? The malice in his tone was almost tangible. Rage made my hands tremble. I turned, ready to speak, but Nathan gently patted the back of my hand in reassurance. Calmly, he removed his watch and the hair tie from his wrist. His fingers lingered on the hair tie for a long moment. A faint smile flickered in his eyes. Remember to give it back to me, he said lightly. I only have this one. Then he turned around and slowly rolled up his sleeves. Augustine. He lifted his gaze. His voice was cold, condescending. If no one ever taught you manners, I don't mind giving you a proper lesson. Chapter 18. Augustine's leg had only just healed when Nathan broke it again, but no one dared say it was Nathan's fault. After all, Augustine had publicly insulted his elder first, and I took the opportunity to release the photos and videos I had prepared. Most were intimate shots of Augustine and Selena. Some were records of the reckless incidents I had cleaned up for Augustine over the years. True or not, they were enough to let public opinion pressure the Koo family into silence when my family proposed dissolving the engagement. They even had to cut off a substantial portion of interest as compensation. I heard that when Augustine learned in the hospital that the engagement had been called off, he made a huge scene and was slapped hard by his father. My own father, however, was very satisfied. Hold on tight to Nathan. That was what he told me. I didn't answer. For once, I was distracted. After that day, Nathan didn't seem affected at all by Augustine's words. Augustine had done plenty of outrageous things before. I didn't take his insults to heart. But Nathan became busier and busier. So busy he no longer had time to eat with me. Eventually, so busy he didn't even have time to see me. When I asked Secretary Lee, he said it was normal. President Koo was even busier when he was abroad. I could only suppress the doubts in my heart. When Nathan had to leave on a business trip, I even expressed understanding. One day I'll earn enough money to keep you as my kept man. When I said that, I pounced on him and bit his collarbone hard. The night before he left, I shamelessly insisted on staying over at his place. In the end, nothing happened. Nathan's self-restraint was so extreme that I almost began to doubt whether I was attractive to him at all. If not for the kisses he left on me, still scorching, still lingering. All right, Nathan kissed me again, restrained, controlled. After he went abroad, life continued. I was busy dealing with the illegitimate son my father had inserted into the company, and Nathan was busy earning himself a bride price. His words, not mine, but we talked every day. Nathan would always pinpoint the flaws in my proposals, then patiently guide me step by step on how to deal with the old foxes on the board. I grew quickly, yet he never mentioned when he would return. Maybe he really was just busy. I told myself that. I even thought about surprising him one day by flying over unannounced. But before I could, Augustine escaped from the hospital. His leg hadn't fully healed. He looked disheveled. I didn't lie to you, Vicky. He looked at me and said softly, Nathan really is sick. Chapter 19. Augustine showed me a video. An empty room, nothing inside. Nathan stood quietly by the window. Sunlight from outside stretched his shadow so long it almost felt suffocating. The entire scene carried an overwhelming sense of loneliness, especially the expression on his face. For the first time, I understood what Augustine had meant before by cold to the point of inhuman and a tool without emotions. Nathan watched people come and go with utter indifference, as though nothing in this world had anything to do with him. He has alexithymia, Augustine said with a mocking curl of his lips. Simply put, Nathan can't feel other people's emotions. He barely has any of his own. He added sarcastically, not surprising, considering he has a lunatic for a mother. That was when I learned. Nathan had originally been an illegitimate son, unacknowledged by the Koo family, to force his way into the Koo household. He had witnessed his mother's death with his own eyes. He stayed in that house with her body for 3 days and 3 nights. Augustine stared at me, almost as if venting his hatred. When they brought Nathan out, he couldn't say a single word, like a puppet without sensation. Post-traumatic stress disorder. I didn't respond. I simply kept watching the Nathan in the video. When was this filmed? Abroad. Most likely. The people passing by were mostly blonde and blue-eyed foreigners. What state of mind had he been in while undergoing that kind of treatment? Alone, with no one by his side. Suddenly I remembered. Nathan had told me the truth from the very beginning. I'm not sure whether I even have the ability to love. Not love me, but love anyone. He had never lied to me. Why did you suddenly stop liking me? Augustine muttered. His face was filled with confusion. Was it because of Selena? But I never liked her. I just thought she resembled you, the way you used to be. I thought. His voice broke. It took him a while before he could continue, tears choking his words. I never stopped liking you. I just overheard your conversation with your dad. I thought you were only good to me for interest. You're not some delicate flower raised in a greenhouse. I smiled faintly, calmly stripping away the last of his excuses. You're not an ignorant child either. You can tell sincerity from hypocrisy. Even now, you're still making excuses for your own cowardice. Augustine, you're both pitiful and laughable. His throat bobbed violently. His eyes burned red. After a long time, he whispered, I'm not. Save that for yourself. I had no patience to counsel a confused man-child. Then I said quietly, you know where Nathan is. It wasn't a question. Augustine's body stiffened abruptly. I curved my lips in mockery. You think it was a coincidence you escaped the hospital so easily, found me so smoothly, and could stand here unharmed, showing me that video from a rehabilitation center and revealing Nathan's past? For a fleeting moment, I felt a trace of sympathy for Augustine. Very little. What do you mean? His breathing grew heavy. Pain drained the color from his face. He bent forward, bracing his elbows on his knees just to keep from collapsing. His entire body trembled. He stared at me in disbelief. Nathan, used me? Who knows? I shrugged, expressionless. I snapped the SIM card in half, then smashed the phone that held the video. That's something I'll have to ask him in person. I remembered once asking Nathan pitifully if I looked like a tool to him. He hadn't forgotten to vent my anger for me. I tried to smile, but couldn't, so I stopped pretending altogether. Just before leaving, I suddenly remembered something and turned back. Looking at Augustine very seriously, I asked, have I never hit you before? Chapter 20. Nathan was in the villa that once belonged to Augustine, now under his name. Forget leaving the country. He hadn't even left the city. I let out a cold laugh and hung up on Secretary Lee. Birds of a feather. When I arrived, no one else was inside. Familiar with the layout, I walked straight toward the room that used to be mine. The door was slightly ajar. Low, restrained breathing drifted through the crack. I stopped at the doorway, one breath after another. Suppressed desire pushed to its extreme, until it sounded almost on the verge of collapse, desperate. The lights weren't on, just like that night 2 years ago. The moment I stepped inside, Nathan's scent enveloped me completely. At this rate, he'd ruin himself. I thought expressionlessly. In the dim light, I could vaguely make out the figure curled on the bed. Nathan didn't stop. If anything, my presence only made his movements more intense. The sound of breathing mixed with something else, almost deliberate. I thought a duet would sound better. I spoke calmly. Nathan clearly hadn't expected that. He paused. Tired? I added helpfully. Need assistance? After a moment of silence, a hoarse, muffled chuckle filled the room. I thought you'd be scared and run away. He said that would be the normal reaction. I never claimed to be normal. I sat down on the edge of the bed, content with what little I could see. Then I took over. A low groan escaped him. His body trembled. You shouldn't have come here. His voice softened instinctively, coaxing as always. Go back. Secretary Lee will help you. From now on, you can do whatever you want. No one will stand in your way again. I want to be my family's heir. You can. I want to acquire the Koo family. Another low laugh. That too. And you? I didn't stop. If anything, I was rougher. My tone turned mocking. Stay here and indulge yourself to death? Let your body rot before anyone finds you? Nathan remained tolerant. Only when he truly couldn't endure it would he arch slightly, easing the overwhelming sensation. He smiled faintly. Monsters deserve ugly deaths. He had been smiling more lately. I hated it. Who called you a monster? My hand tightened. Secretary Lee? The cuss? Or you? Nathan fell silent. Nathan, no one gets to call you a monster. Not now. Not ever. I let go and found his hand in the dark. Interlaced our fingers. Sticky palms pressed together without care. My voice hardened. Whoever says it, I'll tear their mouth apart. And if I end up being called a monster too, so be it. You're not. His breathing grew uneven. For once, he used a stern tone with me. Don't say that. Then stop me from becoming one. To hell with gentleness and reason. I had never been that kind of person. Chapter 21. My fingers brushed against something slick and raised. The hair tie. Soiled. I paused, then firmly pulled it off. Vicky? Nathan sounded startled. Instinctively, he tried to take it back, but in the next second, his entire body went rigid. The elastic stretched to its limit. The crystal bead brushed against the most sensitive place. For a fleeting moment, Nathan trembled even harder. After a second's thought, I gave up on wrapping it a second time, leaving myself a way out. Perhaps. I've put the hair tie back on you. This time, I won't give you a chance to take it off. But I'm still very angry. Angry enough to want to bite you to death. I paused, then vented my frustration by biting his lip, until I tasted blood, and the salt of bitter tears. Nathan didn't resist, even pushed to the brink. He only breathed unevenly. Still gentle, still steady, still tolerating everything I did. Nathan. I called his name. Calmer now. If you wanted to give me a way out, then you should have stayed far away. At least don't let me see you. On the way here, I had figured many things out. Why Nathan was always restraining himself. Why a man who got jealous over the smallest details had never publicly acknowledged our relationship. Why he never once mentioned changing the engagement, even though I had hinted at it countless times. Even though with just one word from him, the engagement partner could have become him. But Nathan had done nothing. He had simply handed all the choice to me. Smart girl. Nathan didn't seem surprised. He lifted a clean hand to touch my cheek and sighed softly. But I can't bear to. Then don't let go. After a long silence, Nathan's calm voice sounded again. I thought I was getting better. But when Augustine said that word, he paused. Voice rough. Vicky. I relapsed. I felt the emotions draining out of me again. Everything became blurred. I was even afraid that one day I'd have to rely on imitation just to like you. You're so good, and you're still so young. You should have better choices. I listened quietly, then suddenly laughed. Would you really allow me to choose someone better? The hand holding mine tightened abruptly. Then, as if remembering something, he loosened it carefully, afraid of hurting me. That was my answer. Yes. Nathan gave a low, humorless laugh. How selfish of me. Is selfishness so bad? I shifted and straddled him. Love is selfish. Or are you planning to be generous again like 2 years ago? Let go of my hand and watch me get hurt one more time? The body beneath me tensed instantly. Nathan's breathing quickened. Never. Then don't let go of my hand. My nose stung. My voice softened. Nathan, this time let me stay with you, okay? You're just sick. That's all. People get sick. Eat properly. Sleep properly. Take your medicine on time. Continue treatment. Things will get better. I held him tightly. Only then did I realize how afraid I was. I didn't dare imagine what my world would look like without Nathan. I don't even remember what I said after that. I only know that in the end, I kept repeating, Nathan, besides you, no one else loves me anymore. A man who once believed he had lost the ability to love, taught me what love was, taught me how to love. How could I possibly let someone like that go? Nathan, I don't think I've ever properly said this to you, so let me say it now. I like you. I like you. Chapter 22. I love you. Nathan. The arms around me tightened abruptly. All the restraint, the suppressed possessiveness and hunger, broke free at once. Nathan tilted his head up and kissed me, fierce, as though he wanted to tear me apart and swallow me whole. And then, slowly, it softened into something almost reverent, careful, lingering. A nearly inaudible sigh escaped between our lips. Finally, Nathan answered me in a low voice. Besides you, no one else would love me either. Nathan had grown up hearing people call him a monster. It only eased slightly when he began to display extraordinary talent. And it disappeared completely when the old master died, and Nathan came close to taking control of the Koo family. Many people believed he had caused the old man's death. How absurd. Nathan had merely witnessed the man's final struggle before death. The funeral was dull and tedious. He couldn't feel grief, so he didn't shed crocodile tears like everyone else. The only unexpected surprise was seeing that little girl at the funeral, the only one who had ever said she would stay by his side and become a monster with him. She had changed. Her once bold and unruly nature was now restrained, forced into a mold labeled gentle and rational. Nathan should have found someone like that boring. Until, from the corner of his eye, he noticed something. The girl who had just been softly comforting others. The moment they turned away, her expression went blank. Judging by the shape of her lips, she even mouthed a rather crude curse. So she hadn't changed, Nathan had thought. At first, it was just curiosity. Then his gaze lingered a little longer. And later, that night happened. By then, Nathan was very good at imitation. At least, to others, he appeared completely normal. But he wasn't. He had lost the ability to love. Even saying "I like you" was only because Vicky was different to him. Even the doctor had said his condition was improving. Though slowly, Nathan had intended to explain everything clearly to Vicky when she was sober. He hadn't expected to overhear that conversation instead. All right, I'll stay away from him. Nathan had stood there, feeling oddly blank. He shouldn't have been able to feel anything. So why had he suddenly found it hard to breathe? Vicky had seen him. He hadn't missed the flicker of surprise and guilt in her eyes. It's fine, he had told himself. It didn't matter. So he pretended not to hear. And sometime later, he chose to leave for abroad on his own. He sought out a renowned psychiatrist for therapy. He eventually left the rehabilitation center. The doctor said his condition had improved greatly. Perhaps. Nathan unconsciously rubbed the hair tie around his wrist. That was his medicine. Chapter 23. Vicky was wronged. The moment Nathan learned of it, he returned to the country without hesitation. He never once considered whether he even had the right to fight for her. He only knew one thing. Vicky had been wronged. He had to go back and stand up for her. That had been promised long ago. Vicky said they should have an affair. Nathan agreed. Perhaps it was the only way he could have her. Even briefly. He didn't want to give that up. The scarf Nathan received was from a luxury brand, but Secretary Lee mentioned that he had seen Vicky post on social media. She was learning how to knit. Then where was the one she made? Had she given it to someone else? Nathan saw the scarf around Augustine's neck. He thought this was how it should be. He had already prepared himself to let go, until Vicky, fuming, said that scarf had nothing to do with her, and declared that she was his future wife. The tiny flame in Nathan's chest reignited, only to be extinguished again by Augustine's single word. Lunatic. Cold to the core. Nathan relapsed. Nathan went to the villa. He was afraid, so he relied on relentless, overwhelming stimulation to remind himself of his love for Vicky. Yes, love. It took Nathan a long time to understand. Loving Vicky had become instinct carved into his bones. He didn't want to lose it. Vicky came, as expected, but Nathan still softened, so he deliberately showed her the ugliest, most broken side of himself. He told himself it was fine. If she was frightened and ran away, that was fine. She deserved better choices. But Vicky walked in. Vicky said she loved him. All right. She said it herself. This time, even if it killed him, he would never let go of her hand again. Two monsters, meant to cling to each other to the very end. When Nathan woke up, there was a scarf around his neck, drafty, the kind that clearly had been handmade and imperfect. It must have been the one the girl had knitted herself but felt too embarrassed to give. There was also a new hair tie on his wrist, a matching pair. The other one was on Vicky's wrist. Nathan sat there for a long time, lost in thought. In the end, he decided, perhaps he shouldn't be a monster after all. He wanted his girl to stand in the sunlight, openly, proudly, receiving everyone's envy and blessings.